This morning, we have a ruling in a case challenging Colorado's universal pre-K program. A federal judge ruled Catholic preschools can, in fact, get public funding while considering religion in enrollment. The school's policy also does not allow students of same-sex couples. Two Catholic parishes in Littleton and Lakewood filed a lawsuit last year. They said they were missing out on public funding because they believed it was their religious right to exclude gay couples, prioritize Catholic students, and hire Catholic staff. However, the federal judge said they were not being singled out because all providers had to follow the same rules. It's a lot of information. That's why we had to bring in 9 News legal expert Whitney Traylor to break it all down for us. Thanks so much for coming in.
Sure, good to be here.
It is fascinating with this universal pre-K program and some of these private religious schools and how this will work. So why did the judge rule in favor of the schools?
Yeah, so the issue was we had this universal pre-K program, UPK, that provides 15 hours of free childcare per week, but the state said you can't discriminate based on sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, race, and all of these other factors. And so what the Catholic schools were saying was, these two plaintiffs actually were saying, hey, we don't want to comply with the gender identity and sexual orientation aspect. And they said we should be exempt from that under a religious exemption. And the court ultimately agreed, and the court said, well, because the state has granted different exemptions, meaning schools could discriminate based on things like being of the same congregation. So if you're a Catholic school, you could favor Catholic students, if you will. And so the court said, well, since you have made these exemptions for these schools, state, you also have to make the exemptions here on the sexual orientation and gender identity issue.
So what did the court rely on for its precedents in this case?
Yeah, so there were a number of Colorado cases. So the Masterpiece Cake case was in there, and then the case involving the website designer who didn't want to provide websites for LGBTQ couples. And so the court and the plaintiffs, or the defendants, or the plaintiffs, excuse me, the schools actually relied on those cases, and the court used those in its 101-page opinion.
It seems certain there will be an appeal in this case, yes?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yes, because this was a federal judge, Judge Kane, federal district court judge. So the next level would be to appeal to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, and from there, the U.S. Supreme Court. And right now, this doesn't, because it's a trial court, it doesn't necessarily create precedent. No other court has to follow this decision. But if it gets appealed, and whatever the 10th Circuit says, that then becomes binding law. So this is how our law evolves, and we'll take all the, because there's a number of different cases throughout the nation and throughout the state suing on the same types of issues. So now we'll have these appellate courts making rulings, and that's then how we'll shape our laws.
Do you think it will go to the Supreme Court?
I could see it going to the Supreme Court. Definitely, I'd be surprised if somebody didn't appeal, so it would at least go to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. And I would suspect that they would file writs asking the Supreme Court to hear this, and I think the Supreme Court would hear this because this is a case that affects so many folks.
Yeah.
It definitely deals with the First Amendment, religious. They're saying it's violates their free exercise clause, meaning, hey, we're not able to actually exercise our religion. The state is coming in and prohibiting it. So yeah, I could see the Supreme Court accepting this case.
Does this open up a whole can of worms? Because this was two Catholic parishes, right? But
yes,
there are so many religious private schools within Colorado. What happens now with all of those schools?
That's a great question. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to see more challenges. There was a challenge just last year in October on the same thing, and a judge granted a preliminary injunction to two private schools on the same issue. So now what you're going to see then is more religious schools saying, hey, we want to participate, we want some of that public funding, but hey, state, you can't tell us exactly, you can't tell us what to do.
It's very interesting. Let's see what happens with all of it. As always, Whitney, thank you so much for coming in.
For sure, good to be here.
All right.